Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we have a new video. What if Ace came back to life part 2? Before we get started, please hit that like and subscribe button. Disclaimer. One Piece is owned by Eiichiro Oda. I do not own anything One Piece related. Obviously. Let's get started. Chapter 5. As you search. Seeking out for those lost moments. The ones that have been consumed by time. Does it not occur to you that the thing you may be searching for is the exact thing that you are running away from? Haruta was always known in the crew to be the most cheeky one. The one that always would sneak up on you and express that humorous side of her, despite how mellow you once were. Though, the same thing could be said for the rest of the crew. They all have their special little quirks, their personalities. The little things that make them unique, and the personal things that made them his family. Being on board the Moby Dick was like a dream come true. Being forever surrounded by their family, sailing the depths of the world's ocean as free as they could be. It was everything that he could have wished for. So when, 2 years later, when she makes her way up towards the place where her family is buried along with the rest of her grieving brothers, those special little quirks, for a split of a second, they seem to fade from existence. It had been 2 long years. 2 extremely protracted and painful years since she and all of her brothers had lost their father and their brother. Ace had died protecting his younger brother, whereas Whitebeard died protecting his sons and daughters. Even though both had died so others could live, sometimes it seemed it would have been better the other way round. To let their family protect their beloved brother and father. But they couldn't. And from then on, the regret and sadness would eat them away, despite the guiltiness they felt. Glancing to the side, Haruta spotted Namor, looking as lost in his thoughts as she was, recollecting the many adventures and trials that the crew had faced before anything regarding Teach interrupted their lives. Placing her hand on top of the fishman's shoulder, Haruta shot Namor a weak but meaningful smile, shaking him out of his thoughts. "Hey, you okay?" she asked reassuringly, even though he already knew the answer. Nodding, the fishman shuffled forward a bit, causing Haruta's hand to fall. Namor turned around, sending Haruta a saddened smile before looking forward towards the hill. "Yeah, I'll be fine. How do you reckon Marco's doing?" "Same as us, I guess," she answered, also gazing towards the hill. Though that's what she'd said, she wasn't really feeling that way. The harsh truth was that Marco had been closest to them all. Oyaji, Ace, Thatch. They all knew this was true, because out of everybody, Marco had been the first and only one that had walked over to where they had been buried, while everyone else just watched, waiting for their captain to return. Namor let out a sad laugh, looking up towards the sky, raindrops dripping down his face. "I sure hope not." Chuckling the same laugh herself, Haruta stayed, glued to her spot as the raindrops danced around her. Suddenly, the sight of her captain caught their eyes, though seeing him caused Haruta to take a few steps back, before rushing towards him with confusion. Marco had not returned with the sad, solemn face he had arrived to the island with. He had instead a shadowed face which was facing the ground, his fists clamped tightly together as blue flames started to lick his shoulders. The sense of power radiated off of him, as his body shook slightly, causing his brothers around him to think that he had finally lost it. That thought quickly changed as Marco raised his head, everybody around him taking a slight step back as they stared, eyes wide at the very, very pissed off Marco that stood before them. Stopping a few feet in front of him, Haruta gasped for breath, giving him a worried glance, unable to tell why he was so angry. "Marco? What's wrong? Did something happen?" Not answering, Marco continued to stay quiet, lowering his head even him. His pupils were trembling, a sight that made the crew worry even more. Slowly, he raised his hand, indicating for Haruta and anybody else to go and have a look themselves. "Ace's dash," he whispered, as if no other words could leave his mouth. Picking up her pace, Haruta ran past him, heading towards where her father and brother's graves were. Finally she stopped, the sight of a substance on the ground a few meters away from where the graves were meant to be catching her attention. Glancing to the side, she noticed Izo had caught up to her and Namor, watching as he knelt down to inspect the substance. "Mud?" he whispered, his eyebrows furrowing. Deciding to go ahead, her and Namor headed towards the white cloak which fluttered in the wind, soaked in the rain that was now pouring from the sky. Halting, the two gasped, their pupils wide with disbelief at what the gravesite had become. Ace's belongings were gone, the ground below dug up, showing an empty coffin. A shattering silence hit the air, the two pirates unable to speak as their minds tried to catch up what their eyes were seeing. That was until a grazed, choked voice filled the silence. "What the hell is this?" Izo yelled, walking up to the two. Haruta gulped, kneeling down in the mud that surrounded the coffin, her pupils widening for a split of a second. "What the dash? When I find the person who did this," Izo continued, turning around as he tried to keep his calm. "They are beyond fucking dead." His eyes disappeared, shading the utter fury written on his face. "And I am sure that Marco feels the same way." Quickly, Izo rushed back to where the rest of the crew was, the back of him shaking. Staying near that place made himself want to hurl. Namor, who had been quiet the whole time, turned to take a glance at Whitebeard's grave, his eyes gluing in place. Who would have done this? It couldn't have been the Marines. They agreed that they would respect the burial of Ace. Since when do Marines respect pirates' wishes? As far as I know, all they care about is wiping us off the map. Haruta quickly questioned back, her tone disgusted. But they would never have gone this far. It goes against what they believe in. What they believe in? Damn Namor, since when were you so pro-Marine? Not now, Haruta. Namor glimpsed at Haruta, before his eyebrow raising slightly. What are you doing? Haruta stayed silent, her eyes still scanning the dug-up grave before her. Eventually she spoke, her voice rasped and quiet. This dirt. It doesn't look like it was dug through or sliced from above. What do you mean? Meeting Namor's gaze, Haruta lifted her head, her vivid blue eyes shaking. It's just that, from the way the earth is shaped from what appears to be the removal of the body, Haruta gulped, standing up as her body began to tremble. Brushing the dirt off of her white feathered trousers, she continued nervously. What I'm saying is, that it looks to me like the grave was dug from the inside, not from the outside. After what felt like an eternity of silence, the fishman narrowed his eyes in confusion. What? Looking at how the earth is shaped around the grave, there is no way that anyone would be able to remove the body. So instead I turned to inspect the detail of the cracks which seemed to have formed. They were formed by an explosion, Namor. And the only way that is possible, is for someone inside the coffin to actually dash. Haruta's voice trailed off, the all too familiar silence shook the air again. The drips of the falling raindrops hitting the monument echoed in the air. It couldn't be what she was thinking, right? Namor, is it possible that dash? Stop it, Haruta. Don't be ridiculous. Not right now. But Haruta looked down to the ground, the logical side of herself fighting the thoughts. Do you think this is a joke? Namor grabbed a hold of her shoulders, startling Haruta from her jumbled thoughts. This isn't some prank or joke that someone's playing on us. I didn't think I'd have to explain the situation here. Namor. It's probably just some sick bastard who has a grudge against us. We have a ton of dangerous enemies who probably thought this was the best way to get back at us. That's the only thing which could have happened. Listen to me, Namor. Haruta shouted, causing Namor to become silent, a slight tremble coming from her lips. It was something I was only suggesting. Let's just go back to everyone, okay? They're probably as upset and confused as we are, so let's just go back, please. Tears started to swell up in her eyes, as Namor slowly let go of his shoulders. Nodding, they both turned back, slowly walking away from the gravestones. Quickly looking back at the uncovered grave, Haruta frowned, her instinct screaming at her that there was something more to it than revenge. Slowly looking over to Oyaji's grave, she sighed. I must have got it wrong, she whispered, following Namor back to the ship. Fate must despise Ace. Bad luck stalked the man, similar to the way animals stalk their prey before killing them off. Why was Ace thinking of this though? He was completely and utterly lost. Of course he wouldn't admit it out loud though. He had been floating at sea for what seemed like an eternity, and Ace's patience was just about to give. Previously, when he had been sailing on his striker, he had been given certain navigational points which always lead Ace to where he'd wanted to go. But when he was sailing on a ruined boat, navigating the tremendous seas of the New World with no idea where to go, of course after the said person had escaped his own coffin after dying in the depths of war, it was understandable that the said person was just about to lose it. And meaning by he was losing it, he was starting to talk to things that weren't actually there. I have got to say. Ace laughed, hitting the side of the frail deck, glancing over the side. For a little boat like you, you sure have some balls. Damn, this is pathetic. What was that? What kind of pirate are you if you can't even sail a lame boat like this? Ace's eyebrow twitched, looking around for the source of the sound. The hell did you just say? It's been 8 days since we left that island, and we've done nothing but float around, going nowhere. You have no faith in my navigating skills. Ace laughed, laying back onto the side of the boat, his cloak falling down the sides of his elbows. Don't worry, we'll get there. And with that simple-minded attitude, it's amazing you haven't died again already. Twitching again, Ace narrowed his eyes, looking at a certain area of the boat as if he was glaring at a person who was sitting down. Is that so? Smirking, his eyes glanced at the other figure inside the boat. Well, I'll be damned. Ace laughed, cracking his knuckles, the smirk still plastered on his face. You've got that right. The voice gave an audible sigh, appearing to point in the direction opposite Ace, causing the freckled man to look behind him. Jolting up to his feet, a gasp of relief washed through him. Not too far away from the Lantine, a barely visible island caught Ace's eyes. Maybe he wasn't too unlucky after all. Chapter 6. Docking on the island turned out to be a lot easier than either Ace or the voice could have imagined. From what Ace could remember, most of the islands that were even close to Red Line would be heavily guarded by either Marines or pirates. So seeing that there was only one small, quaint village that looked to be deserted did not quench Ace's fear of where in the world he was. They wouldn't have. Walking towards the grassy cliffs that overlooked the sea behind them, the white-cloaked figure's eyes darted everywhere, trying to grasp the scenery, the sounds, the smells. It didn't look like a place which was used to damage or warfare. It also didn't look like this place was showing any signs of erased beauty or pain from its inhabitants. And it certainly didn't look like it had been bombarded by Marines or warmongering pirates. And that can only mean one thing. Shit. What? Halting in his steps, Ace's hand rested on the back of his head, rushing his fingers through his hair as he tried to calm down. We're not in the Grand Line. Not in the Grand Line? You're guessing, aren't you? Twitching, his eyes shifted slowly to the left, looking at the presumed voice up and down. Who said I was guessing it? Me. Eyes twitching again, he faced away from the voice, beginning to walk back up towards the cliffs. A scowl easily visible on his face, he started to mutter under his breath. Hey look, it's not a guess. Look around. Do you see any pirate or marine ships around here? There is none. Unless pirates have become extinct since I've been gone, then it looks like we've round up in one to the blue seas. It's either that or we're at the start of the Grand Line. Really? What? Sometimes pirate, you shows signs of actually not being stupid. Smirking, Ace looked back at the voice, sending it a smile. This isn't one of those times. And as easily as that smile came, it went. Ace's eyebrows started twitching, his eyes narrowing. You know, you're starting to get real too cocky for my liking. Shouldn't we be doing something, I don't know, more important? The said voice pointed towards the town they were approaching, distracting the fire thrower from his thoughts. TCH. Deciding it best not to interrupt Ace from his lovely about the voice, it sighed, following him up the steep cliff. Vista leaned against the wooden walls of the cabin, his eyes closed. He stood there listening to the barely audible breaths coming from his captain. The man hadn't said a thing except from a few words since they had left the island, the others which had returned from the graves being just as silent. All of them had returned, paler than before, as the shock of the stolen body clouded all of their minds. After they had all continued to ask the four what had happened, the one that spoke was Namor, telling them something which they wouldn't have thought would happen in their wildest dreams. Even thinking about it made his stomach swell and his eyes sting. His body. It's gone. What? Namor said, his eyes hidden from everyone's view. Ace. His body. Some bastard has taken it. Silence hit the air, everyone quiet as their minds processed what the fishman had just said. Taking a hold of his collar, Vista shook the man harshly, his breath quivering. What are you talking about, Namor? Someone stolen Ace's body? That's ridiculo. It's true. All heads turned to their captain, who was previously silent, his eyes empty and face stern. Vista slowly let go of Namor, who stumbled back, his eyes glued on Marco. Blenheim was the first to speak, though the actual words was a mash of confusion. WWHUahoo? We don't know yet. But we will. Marco answered quick, as he walked slightly away from the group, only to turn back at them again. We are to board the ship immediately. They haven't been gone for long now, so we are to quickly head to the next island. It's the most likely place we'll find them. Everyone silently watched him walk down to the edge of the forest, a barely audible whisper falling from his lips. And when we do, I'm going to kill those bastards myself. Vista sighed, slowly opening his eyes to once again look at his captain, his eyes empty from the contentment that were once there 2 years ago. He's definitely never seen Marco that mad before, not even after the days after Marineford. Those were tough times. They were long, lingering days that didn't seem to end. The grief of losing their family members unable to sink in. Even then had he not seen Marco look this upset. Heck, the man even swore, something he hadn't heard since the day he joined. When are we due to dock to the next island? Vista blinked, taken from his thoughts as he processed the question. They said another 4 days. That's at best though. Nodding, Marco resumed to carry on with the paperwork in front of him, though both men knew that no work was actually being done. My division is now currently on lookout for any passing ships. I assure you that you'll be the first to know if there is any sight of anything. Vista said sternly, the only other noise being the raindrops hitting the window of the cabin. Marco nodded again, Vista taking that as a sign to leave. Letting out another sigh, he walked towards the door, twisting the doorknob. Thank you, Vista. Turning around, Vista saw his captain sending him a weak smile. Mirroring the same emotion, he nodded, pushing the door open and leaving. It was going to be a long 4 days. Ace stood there, blinking a few times, trying to make sure that what he was seeing was real. Well, more like what he was not seeing. From afar the town looked nearly deserted, but up close, it turned out it was completely gone. Damn, you really do have bad luck. Twitching again at the sound of the voice, he unglued his feet from the ground and began to look in the house's windows, slightly tapping on it to see if anyone was in. Do you seriously think that anyone would answer the door to someone who was wearing nothing but a cloak? Well, I don't see you doing anything. Ace turned around, pointing at the figure with a scowl on his face. I can easily see that there's no one here, it'd be a waste of time. You can put your hand down now, you know. What? Who are you? Ace stated bluntly, his eyes narrowing. You asked me this just now? The voice yelled, its eyes widening. Just answer the damn question. No. What? I said no. Quickly a fire-shaped bullet darted out of Ace's fingertip, aimed for the voice's shoulder. However, to Ace's surprise and dismay, the bullet passed straight through it, causing Ace to take a step back, his back hitting a window. What are you? Do you really have the right to say that, dead man? As soon as the last word was said, another fire bullet came flying at the voice's head. Trying hard not to respond to the other's antics, the voice sighed, sitting on the ground. I get it, okay? This is weird dash. No shit. I'm talking to someone who isn't even here with me. Furrowing its eyebrows, the voice twitched, the words gritting out from its teeth. But just ignore me for now, okay? Twitching for what seemed like the 100th time of the day, Ace pointed at the voice again. Don't give me that shit. Who the hell are you and why have you been following me? Wouldn't a better question be, why did my dumbass brain just realize this now? Twitch. Don't avoid the question, jackass. Like what you're doing? Twitch. Mister, are you okay? Twitch. Wait, what? Turning his head to the source of the sound, Ace was faced short, dirty snot-nosed brat, staring at him with wide eyes. Yeah. Though to be honest, he didn't know what to say. Though he couldn't say the same thing about his mind. 1. Who was this kid? 2. Where had this kid come from? 3. Was this kid even real? 'Cause you're screaming at a bench. You're even pointing to it. Peeling his eyes over to where he was pointing, his eyes were met with a broken bench, the figure he was speaking to only moments ago, gone. Looking back at the kid, he slowly lowered his hand down, before slightly pointing to the bench again with a dumbstruck look on his face. There's an explanation for that. Oh? The little boy tilted his head, giving a questioning look, close to the one his younger brother wore. The difference was though that no one could say no to Luffy, whereas with this kid, he clearly was going to decline any type of explanation as to why he was talking to a bench. Where did you come from? You see, mister, when a mummy and daddy love each other dash. Ace quickly ran over to the kid to put a hand over his mouth. A flash of Dayton and the bandits laughing flashed in his mind as he inwardly shuddered. He was not going to go through that talk again. Especially not with what looked like a 7-year-old kid. Okay, that's not what I meant. I meant, where do you live? Oh. I live in the town over on the other side of this island. There's another town on this island? Ace asked though, mostly to himself. Looking back at the bench, half expecting to see the figure of the voice there, he sighed. Kneeling down so he was at eye level with the kid, Ace smiled, trying to make himself look as harmless as he could. Do you mind showing me the way to this town? Sending the kid another smile, he was relieved to see he kid smiling back at him, lightly grabbing a hold of his cloak. Sure. It's this way, mister? Just call me mister. Giggling, the kid nodded and skipped in front of him, rambling on about something, whilst Ace followed him, his eyes dazed. The kid very much reminded the ex-commander of Luffy when he was around the same age. Or maybe that was his homesickness setting in. He didn't know. All he knew was that he wanted to find his brother soon, and if that meant restarting his adventure from one of the blue seas again, he didn't care. Mister? Huh? Giggling interrupted his thoughts, as he glanced down to the boy yet again, inwardly sighing. Damn it, he forgot the brat was still here. In fact, he's amazed that he was able to follow the kid as lost in thought as he was. He needed to lose him as soon as they got to the town. A cloaked man walking around with innocent-looking child? That won't bring people's attention at all. How long is it till we get to this town of yours? Ace asked, still staring at the child in front of him. The boy turned around, walking backwards as he faced the cloaked figure. I would say around another 10 minutes. It was that close? Ace again asked himself, forgetting that he was in the presence of the child. Yep. No one goes near the village you were in anymore. The kid muttered, facing towards the trees ahead. Oh? Ace raised an eyebrow. The people say something about going there gives them bad memories or something. Though I have no idea why. We lived there happily till around about 2 years ago. 2 years ago? What happened then? Even though Ace couldn't say he loved listening to histories of the islands he visited, he was curious in why the village back there was deserted. The boy in front of him halted, slowly turning round to look at him in the eyes. His eyes shadowed. I don't know what happened. Can't remember. It was obvious from the kid's face that he was lying, but Ace decided not to pry into it. He didn't want to suddenly deal with a crying kid. Giving the kid a pat of the head, he walked a few steps in front of the boy, deciding not to look back as he held up a hand. Thanks, kid. I think I can find my way from here. The kid, still dazed in his thoughts, slightly nodded, before giving the cloaked man a small smile, running back off into the woods. Finally, after walking what seemed an hour compared to a measly 10 minutes, Ace finally came across signs of civilization, and the signs weren't at all subtle. Sounds of crowds. People laughing. People arguing. People crying, echoed its way into Ace's ears. Smells of different types of meat, wheat, fish, fruit smothered around him with every step, along with the sights of a bustling town, a familiarity that Ace had come to miss. Without knowing it, a smile crept onto Ace's face, before reminding himself that he needed to be as discreet as he could. Pulling the hood of his cloak further over his face to hide his features, he continued to walk on. The town was surprisingly huge, compared to that of the village that Ace had previously been in, causing the fire thrower to rethink on how he missed such a place this huge in the first place. It was obvious from within a few moments of approaching this place that pirates were going to be present. After years being one yourself and living around others, you tend to pick up signs of their presence, and in this case, it was several pirates declaring how powerful they were. Choosing to stay far away from anything which looks to cause a scene, Ace stuck to walking along the sides of streets, evading the countless people walking towards and across from him as he tried to find somewhere he could get some information. And that's when Ace spotted a building in which most people were avoiding. He didn't know whether that was a good sign, or a really bad sign. But looking at all his other options, Ace slowly made his way over, squinting his eyes to read the barely visible sign that had hung over the door. The Red Lion Tavern. Smirking, Ace pushed the 2 doors open, casually made his way over to one of the stools. He could really do with a drink right now. Who says he couldn't get any info at the same time? As soon as he stepped inside, all eyes were perched on his back, silence filling the room as he made his entrance. The barkeep looked the cloaked man up and down, thoroughly cleaning one of the mugs, a bored and slightly olden look posted across his face. What? The man sighed, placing the mug down and leaning towards Ace. Will it be? Leaning back, Ace nodded towards the drinks behind the counter. The best you've got. He'd missed the taste of booze, the scent of food, the sound of life. Damn, it's good to be back. Sound started to fill the tavern again, much to Ace's relief, as he watched the barkeep set the mug in front of him, the man still staring at the cloaked figure with interest. You're not from around here, are ya? Shit. That didn't take long. Ace shook his head, bringing the rum to his mouth, drinking it nearly in one. No, I'm not. Heh. Laughing as he whipped up another glass in front of Ace, the man leaned in closer to the ex-commander, throwing a damp cloth over his shoulder. Well, come and then. Tell us your name. Damn. What's up with this old geezer? Leaning back a little more, Ace stared at the other mug placed before him, before glancing the other way. A newspaper caught the freckled man's eye, causing him to raise an eyebrow. Tell you what. I'll tell you my name if you give me some information. Grinning, the barkeep slammed the counter. Information's what you want, is it? Well, tell me, boy, what's it you want ta here? The date. What's today's date? Not expecting such an easy request, the barkeep himself raised an eyebrow, before squinting his eyes, his mind obviously trying to recall it. The date you say? It's the 1st of February. What of it, boy? Ace's eyes shadowed, his head lowering. He couldn't remember how long it had been from his fight with Teach to Marineford. Had it been weeks, or maybe even months? He didn't know, the whole time spent in Impel Down was just a faint blur. All that he could remember was the pain, the agony of letting his father down. The grief of knowing he wasn't going to see his brothers again, and the torture of knowing Luffy was making his way down to hell with him. Yeah. He chose not remember those times spent there. Lifting up his head again, he picked up the second mug placed before him, gulping it down like it was water, before looking once more at the barkeep. The year? Looking the boy up and down again, the barkeep picked up the dirty rag from over his shoulder, taking the two mugs from Ace's reach. Now that's a rather strange question, a boy like ya doesn't even know what year ES is in? Just answer the question please. It's the 1st of February 1524 if my memory serves me right. 1524? So that means it's been 2 years. Ah. Jumping back from off his stool which quickly slammed to the floor, Ace pointed at the voice's figure, who appeared to be sitting cross-legged on the stool beside him. Sighing, the voice rested its hand on the counter, a bored tone inching in its voice. Man, you really know how to make a scene, don't you? Remember this, you're the only one that can see me. Hearing this, Ace looked around to see the barkeep staring at him with wide eyes, along with anyone else in the area who was in audible reach. Coughing, Ace picked up his stool, slowly sitting on it, waiting for the background noise to continue. Yeah, alright boy? Yeah. I thought I saw somebody I knew. TCH. The barkeep eyed the man, then back at the thing he was previously pointing to. A stool? He really needed to stop talking to furniture. As he tried to look away from the confused look on the barkeep's face, Ace spotted a bounty poster hanging in the background. No way. That couldn't be. Hey. Old man. Mind telling me about that guy in the poster there? Ace pointed over in the direction of a certain bounty poster, causing the barkeep turned round, his sight causing him to laugh. Yeah, a bounty hunter then I presume. Well, let me warn ya, now, if ya thinking about going after the boy, then ya might as well give up now. Some say that they heard ES was the son of the revolutionary leader Dragon. A smile crept on the freckled man's face, his hope of his brother being alive growing. That's the one. Do you know anything more about what's happened to him? Banging his hands on the counter yet again, the barkeep looked at the man with startled eyes. Ya haven't heard, ES said Ta, be the brother of the pirate king's son. People who were there Ta witnessed the war said so themselves. Flinch. They knew. Even though he would have guessed that the whole world knew about his relations with that being, it still punctured him when he heard it. Though that didn't seem to matter, from the way the barkeep was speaking, his brother was still alive. Leaning in closer to the cloaked figure again, the barkeep continued to ramble on. Not only did they say that E ran into that war, but some believe E was the one that released all those criminals from Impel Down. Bellowing laughs from behind interrupted any train of thought that could have been going through Ace's head, the man not bothering to see who the laughs belonged to. Straw Hat Luffy? Jaya ha ha ha. Everyone surrounding the loud man also laughed, cheered even. It was I who freed all the criminals from the dreaded Impel Down. Me. Now this caused Ace to turn around and stare at the loud deafening man, making his eyebrow raise slightly. He thought he recognized the voice, but now it was the face. Damn it. Where have I seen him before? I'm the one who's known as a legend among pirate crews. Everyone in the tavern started to go quiet, staring at the ridiculous-looking man no clown, who was now standing on one of the tables, his followers surrounding him. The one and only leader of the Pirate Dispatch Society. It is I. The Clown Star, Buggy the Clown. Placing a fist in his other hand, Ace blankly stared at the man. Oh. It's him. Banging the counter with his fists again, the barkeep stared at the clown, his eyes wide. Ya know that clown boy? Huh? Ace turned back around to face the barkeep, who was now staring at him. Oops. Did I say that out loud? No. Just heard of him, that's all. Bringing the hood of the cloak forward, still keeping his features hidden, Ace pointed at the rum bottle behind the counter, nodding as the barkeep quickly fetched him another glass. One more question, do you know where I am? The barkeep tilted his head slightly, passing Ace the drink. Ya sure do ask a lot of weird questions, boy. How can ya not know where ya are? Grabbing the drink, Ace slowly sipped it this time, sighing as he set the drink back down. Taking the man's silence as an answer, the barkeep continued on. Yeah, in the New World, sonny. The island of Larenko, near the Red Line. Larenko? That rang another bell. Seriously, why can I not think of anything today? Ace sighed, lowering his head down a bit. The voice next to Ace laughed, before sneering at him with a smug tone. I was right, you did guess it. Choosing to ignore the voice next to him, Ace looked back up at the barkeep with interest. I'm in the New World? But when I docked this island, there was nobody around. Taking the mug from Ace, the barkeep's eyes narrowed slightly, facing away from him as he went to wash the mug. Ah. Ye must have docked at the other side of this island then. No, you see nobody goes round that area anymore, boy, and if ye are planning on staying then you shouldn't either. Curious, Ace pushed further. Oh? And why is that? His eyes shadowed, similar to the way the boy's was earlier. The barkeep faced the man with a grim look on his face. This used to be an island protected by the Whitebeard pirates. After his death 2 years ago, this island was left unprotected. The Marines thought that it would be a good chance to punish us for allying with pirates, so they wiped part of this island's population as a warning. The barkeep slowly continued to clean the mug, Ace staring at the man with wide eyes. His fault. That was all his fault. Did he even deserve to live after what he had done to this island? And not just this island. No. There were plenty of other islands that were under Whitebeard's name. So, how many more people had died because of him? Ace slammed his fists down on the counter, burning the edges of it discreetly. This alarmed the barkeep, slightly tapping Ace on the shoulder. Listen to me, pirate. Don't you dare start going down that guilt trip again. That's what got you here in the first place, right? Glaring over to his side, he whispered with a saddened yet angered voice. And just what do you know? As far as I know, you're just a voice inside my head. Oi, boy, you all right? The barkeep questioned, taking a slight step back. Ace sighed, rubbing his hand over his forehead as he sat up. Though where his eyes should have stopped at the man in front of him, instead they moved on to the grinning picture of the boy behind him. He's alive. It seems like the others are alive. I need to focus on that. Looking towards the barkeep, he held his hands up showing a guilty smile. About the drinks. They're on me, boy. After all, ye have been a pleasure to serve, unlike the ruthless pirates which have been in air before. The barkeep smiled back at him. Taking the gesture quickly, Ace got up off the stool, before turning around. But there is one thing that you haven't done, boy. Turning around, Ace raised an eyebrow, unknowing of what the man had wanted. Oh? What's your name? Smirking, Ace turned to face the man, whispering words only the man could hear. Ace. Portgas d. Ace. Chapter 7. Ace. Portgas d. Ace. The barkeep stood there, mouth slightly agape, the obvious expression on his face showing that he had no idea on how to respond to what the young man in front of him had just proclaimed. Not giving the barkeep time to ask any more questions, Ace nodded his head, turning away and swiftly making his exit. Focusing his eyes on the street in front of him, he had to wince, the sunlight beaming off his eyes onto his freckles. Wow, that was a stupid thing to do. He's going to tell someone. He won't. Ace stated simply, pulling the cloak's hood further over his head to hide his face. You're just guessing again, aren't you? Giving the voice a quick glare, he chose not to respond. He knew very well what would happen if the Marines found out that he was alive this early in his search, and none of them were even close to decent. Looking around to see if the coast was clear, Ace blended into the crowds again, making his way back towards the sea. However, the thoughts of the previous conversation kept ringing through Ace's mind. This used to be an island protected by the Whitebeard pirates. After his death 2 years ago, this island was left unprotected. The Marines thought that it would be a good chance to punish us for allying with pirates, so they wiped part of this island's population as a warning. He was pissed. Maybe pissed is under-exaggerating. Because, as soon as he found his crew and Luffy, he was going to make sure he'd find Blackbeard and make that bastard pay for what he had done. Catching the irritated look on the fire-thrower's face, the voice bit down on its lip. Muttering under its breath. I guess you really don't learn, do you? Startling him from his thoughts, the sound of cannon fire immediately caught Ace's eyes and ears, including anyone within range. People started to scream and run, dropping all their belongings, making their way to shelter. In the midst of it all, Ace stood there, a scowl on his face as he looked around for the source of the noise. Jaya ha ha ha. Eyebrows rising with recognition, Ace turned round to see the clown which was previously gloating in the tavern before. The clown stood in the opening of the town gates, an arm crossed across his chest as he smugly laughed, a floating arm pointing towards the townspeople who were still running. Run in fear, for it is me. The clown star buggy. Whoa, that's a huge red nose. Is he an idiot? Glancing over to the figure of the voice, Ace laughed, slowly staring back at the loudly proclaimed clown. He's harmless really. I met him back in paradise while I was searching for Blackbeard. Never thought he actually had the balls to make it this far into the Grand Line though. So I'm guessing he would recognize you? Ace nodded. If I'm correct, I thought I saw him at Marineford, so there's a good chance that he doesn't only recognize me, but knows who I am and that I dash. That you died? Clearing his throat, Ace slightly lowered his head, his eyes glazed over. Yeah. That I died. You should stay away from him then. Silently agreeing, Ace turned around, walking in the opposite direction of Buggy, ignoring all sounds coming from the clown. You there? I'm talking to you, the one in the white hood. Looks like he's already spotted you. Twitching, Ace briefly looked back at the clown before halting, a silent and agitated, "What?" spilling from his mouth. A grin passed across Buggy's face, as he cockily staggered over to the cloaked man, before poking him in the chest. I saw you before. You were the one who ignored me in the tavern before, weren't you? Stepping back, Ace lowered his head, trying to edge away from the clown as much as possible without punching him. Trying hard to swallow his pride, Ace nodded before sending a weak smile towards the clown. Yeah. Sorry about that. Sending his hand up as a signal that he was going to leave, Ace shot the clown one last smile before legging it down the street, ignoring the cries of the pirates behind him. Stop him. Oh shit. This is not something he needed right now. Looking towards his fist, he tried his best to ignore the voice in his head that was yelling at him, "Fight back. Why are you running away?" Sounds of gunfire pierced the background as Ace came to a halt. Do you even know who you're messing with, brat? Ace turned to face Buggy, the cloak still covering a majority of his face, a scowl forming. You dare to run away from me? I am the flashiest of all Pier Dash. Tuning out of the clown's words, Ace sighed, thinking of ways he could get out of this confrontation. I was once the strongest pirate in all of East BL Dash. Maybe just a punch will knock out this guy. Ace looked Buggy up and down, assessing how powerful he was. Sure, the clown looked pitiful, but it wasn't wise to go round judging people on how they looked in the Grand Line. If you did, you wouldn't last long. He pirate who is hunting down the all-famous Monkey D. Luffy Dash. Twitch. What was that? Blinking a few times, Ace tuned back into what the fellow pirate was saying, a more curious look appearing on his face. Luffy? You're hunting down Luffy? Aha! So that's what got your attention, was it? Pointing his red nose up towards the sky, Buggy closed his eyes, smugly declaring to the cloaked man. Once I get my hands on Dragon's son, the whole world Dash will bow down to me. Jaya ha ha ha. Eh? Peeking one eye open, Buggy stared at the silent figure, waiting for some kind of reaction coming from him. The cloaked man had his face peering to the floor. So let me get this straight. Buggy unknowingly took a slight step back, unnerved by the tone of voice the figure used. However, that wasn't the only thing that startled the man. Not only was he threatened by the tone he was using, but the voice itself, it was familiar. Why yeah? Right now, you're hunting down Monkey D. Luffy? Buggy didn't have to see the man's face to know that the figure was murderously glaring at him, shaking as the figure looked towards him. Clearing his throat before nodding, Buggy let out a silent yelp. Yes, that's right. Ace smirked. Heh. You see, I can't let you do that. Pointing at the man despite his shaking, Buggy tried to intimidate the man, though, he was very much failing. Oh? And who is it that says I can't? Don't do what I think you're gonna do, idiot. The voice commented, sighing as it leaned against the wall, closing its eyes. What kind of brother would I be if I allowed you to walk away now with all moving limbs? Ace dangerously smiled innocently at the clown, causing the said person to back up more, shaking from fear. Be brother? Buggy yelped. Straw Hat's brother died in the war. You'd be deluded to think that you're him. Ace raised an eyebrow, smirk still easily visible on his lips. Oh. Don't do it. It'll only get you into more crap you're already in. Just let it go. Choosing to ignore the voice's comment, Ace slowly lit his hand on fire from underneath the cloak, taking a few steps towards the clown. Quickly taking one of his knives from his sleeve, Buggy threw the knife at the cloaked figure, laughing half-heartedly as the figure stayed in place, not bothering to move from his spot. However, what Buggy didn't expect was for the knife to go through the figure, only to be covered up by enticing flames which danced upon the figure's skin. Dropping his hands to his waist, Buggy stared with fright at the figure, his nose running as a stutter of words fell out of his mouth. No that can't dash. Pulling back the hood to his cloak, Ace glared at the shaking clown before grabbing a hold the scuff of Buggy's neck. Seeing as you are hunting him right now, care to tell me where Luffy is? Buggy yelped. You dead. Why you're dead. Smirking, Ace stared at the man's eyes, letting out a soft chuckle. Not anymore. 2.5 years passed since Marineford loss. Robin stared down at the paper's headline, frowning. She slowly glanced over to her captain, who was staring over the side of the ship, unnaturally calm and quiet. Despite how much he tried to hide it, all of the crew could see it in his eyes, the way he would stare down at his scar, the constant reminder of what happened all those years ago. The bumbling captain they had before the war fading away for a few moments at a time, leaving a lost brother. The worst thing was that she knew exactly how he felt. The guilt, the loneliness felt despite the people surrounding you. It was something she would never wish on anyone. Especially not her savior, her captain. Settling the paper on the grass below her, she traipsed over where her captain was leaning, offering comfort, without saying a word. Noticing her presence, Luffy quickly looked over his shoulder before grinning. "Robin." Smiling, she leaned her hand onto the rail of the ship. "Luffy, I was just wondering what you were doing over here." "Oh?" Luffy tilted his head, his eyes blank. "It was nothing." Gazing out onto the water once more, he held Robin's shoulder before leaping back. Shooting her one last smile, silently thanking her for the comfort, he went off to search for Sanji, leaving Robin, who continued to gaze at the sea. Her smile fell, the worries for her captain still spiraling in her mind. In the distance, the sight of an island caught her eyes, quickly looking up to see their well-known liar jumping up and down, screaming, "Luffy! Dressrosa is up ahead! Dressrosa!" A silent whisper came from her lips, as her sight returned to the island. Closing her eyes, she thought about the events that were laying ahead, hoping that this would be a calm and peaceful exchange. Smiling once more, she headed to where the rest of the crew were, leaving behind the newspaper on the floor. What was she talking about? When it came to this crew, their adventures were anything but calm. A shout from above caught the duo's attention, the sound coming from a sailor pointing forwards. "Captain! I can see Dressrosa up ahead." All his courage suddenly bouncing back, Buggy laughed, crewmates surrounding him as they cheered. "Dressrosa?" Ace suddenly beamed, his eyes quickly looking over to the small island ahead of them, his whole face lighting up. "Isn't that where Luffy's supposed to be? If I remember hearing correctly, that's where the clown said that Luffy and a Trafalgar Law were headed." "So you were listening?" Ace stated, smiling as the voice turned away annoyed. His eyes wandered back onto the island as they started to fade, memories of their childhood swarming his vision. Ace. A sound called the freckled teen from behind, as he halted in his steps, turning around. "Huh?" A younger boy ran up to him, clearly out of breath as he shot the teen a relived grin before bending over as he rested on his knees. Tears suddenly started to swell in the younger boy's eyes as he started to whimper. "Why, you were walking too fast. I thought for a second that had I lost you." Turning around to fully face the boy, the teen smirked, walking up to the boy as he bent down to face the youngster. "You couldn't keep up with me?" The boy slowly shook his head, trying his best to hold back his tears and be a man. The teen's smirk softened, his facial feature turning into a smile as he reached over to grab the boy's hand, getting the boy's attention. "Damn, I guess we'll have to walk together then." Slowly pulling the boy along, the teen looked down to give the boy a gentle smile, one that was not common on the older's face, as the younger stared at him with widened eyes. Realization finally covered the boy's face as he grinned hugely, tightly gripping onto his brother's hand as he nodded. "K." Both of them continued to walk through the forest, the only sound being the soft humming of the youngest, swinging his hand which was still held in the older's. "Hey, Ace?" Looking down, Ace brought all his attention to the boy. "What is it?" Luffy's lip trembled. "Promise not to get lost again. K?" Ace's eyebrow lifted, a hint of surprise showing in his face. He certainly didn't expect his brother to ask such a serious question. Suddenly his fist landed on the boy's head, as he shouted at Luffy with a hint of laughter. You idiot. You were the one that got lost. Bringing his hand up to his, now, throbbing head, the youngster pouted, mumbling under his breath. Big meanie Ace. Looking back forward, Ace smiled, as he silently muttered under his breath. Fine, I promise. Wide eyes directed at Ace, before a giggling noise being heard below as the boy let go of his brother's hand and ran forward, shouting to him behind. I heard you. Twitching and going red from embarrassment, he quickly ran after the boy. Slash. Ace's blurred vision returned, the island barely visible in the distance. His smile dropped, as his gaze saddened. I broke a lot of promises. Didn't I, Luffy? That's not true. Jumping from his thoughts, he quickly looked to his left to find the voice gazing over the sea as well, its face mirroring Ace's. You're still here, aren't you? Staring, Ace nodded. Yeah, I am. And I have no idea why. Marco stared at his crew, which had finally gathered in front of him, preparations of docking finally complete. His half-opened eyes slowly scrolled over to the island in front of him, glancing at the dolls and toys which were living among the townspeople. He wasn't typically surprised like the other crew members were, it not been the first time to have docked on this island. He wasn't exactly thrilled either to find out that island they were sailing to was Dressrosa, meaning that finding the bastard who was at Ace's grave was going to be harder to find. His thoughts were quickly disbanded, for a hand reached out to shake his shoulder, turning round to find Haruta standing there, her face drowned in sorrow. I think you should have a look at this. Reaching for the object which was placed under her arm, she passed Marco a folded newspaper that was labeled as the Dressrosa's daily newspaper. Slightly raising his eyebrow, Marco nodded, taking a hold of the paper as he slowly opened it, his eyes widening. Prize for tournament revealed, legendary Mara Mara Inomi fruit. Marco started to harshly grip the ends of the newspaper he was holding, silent as no expression showed on his face. Gently shoving the newspaper back in Haruta's hand, he nodded, stepping onto land along with the others as he walked away into the town without saying a word. It didn't take long for him to find the Colosseum where the tournament was said to take place, halting in front of its looming statue, staring at it with a hint of anger. He wasn't certain if Ace's body being snatched and his devil fruit being re-revealed was a coincidence, but he was certain of one thing. He wasn't going to let just anybody have Ace's devil fruit, not if he had anything to do with it. That's it for this part. Before you guys leave, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace.